Money. One of the first things that people think of when they think of the word economics, if they have any idea of what it means at a basic level, one of the first things that are two things that are the most common answers I find when you ask people what they think of when they think of economics. And they think of money and they think of the stock market. And both are true, both are part of economies where they're definitely connected with the economy. But a lot of times we use money, we think about it, we go to a job, we get paid in money as opposed to being paid in other materials or things of that nature. Of trading, we use it instead of barter in a modern economy, and we even use digital money in a lot of senses. And money can be lots of different things: gold, paper, and digital currencies, and even something in the more modern times. We're moving now into the idea of like a cryptocurrency, and it remains to be seen whether these will actually be able to serve as a real money. They are in a limited sense, but they still have some challenges or significant things with them before they can be really considered money. So we're going to look at what is money, why do we use it, and what has government done to it. Governments, banks, and individuals can tamper with the money system, having consequences that spread beyond themselves and to others. And the bigger the entity tampering with a money system, making the money go from what we'll argue is sound money to unsound money, the bigger the consequences are, even though the consequences may not be noticed, or at least the source of the consequences may not be noticed. But first off, think about how you would explain money to someone who was younger, didn't have a concept of what money was, or had seen money being used, but really asking, what is money? Because people would say, well, it's a thing you use to buy stuff, or whatever the case may be, or it's something you get paid from a job, but they're not asking, what does it do? They recognize that, but what is money? What makes money money? What makes something money and something not money? What kinds of things can be used as money and what types of things cannot be used as money? And I've known people who said, and I used to think this before I studied economics, was that money is just an arbitrary concept. It's just a random kind of meaningless concept, and it's kind of just, we're all just dumb, and we assign value to pieces of paper. And okay, fair enough, I see why people may think that, but that's pretty shallow thinking with regard to what money actually is. Can you define money in a sentence? And to start with this definition, before we look at the full definition, the formal definition of what money is, and it's, I believe, 7 characteristics or attributes that make money money. Think about this. You crash land on a desert island. You're there alone. And you have an option to have something with you. Most likely you would choose money. It would be a kind of foolish choice. However, I've said this before in classes or in other cases. If I took out $20 and said, I'll give you $20, probably everyone in the room would want it. That being said, if you were alone on a desert island and you found $20 buried there for some reason, no one else on the island, no reason for it to be there other than just for the imaginary scenario, you find it. Is it the same value to you? Is it the same commodity? Even gold. Let's say you're on the island and you start digging, trying to make maybe a shelter, trying to get other resources or doing something. You start digging on this island and you dig up a bunch of gold. And at first you may be excited, but then as you think about it, it dawns on you, I don't really care about gold now, because gold is no value to me in this situation. Well, why is that the case? Why is gold, which is recognized as valuable throughout centuries by human beings all over the world, though they may give it different names and weigh it differently, all those things, why would you finding gold on a desert island not uh, be any value to you? Well, as we think through this, what people will realize is money is number one, is what people will say is there's nothing to buy. Okay, that's true. But why is there not? There are resources and stuff, but why is there nothing to buy? And fundamentally, it's because, number two, there are no people. There are no other people to buy and sell and trade with. And therefore, if you don't have other people who interact and recognize money, then it's not money. And you don't have a money system. You can't have money by yourself. Now, you can have it sitting in a room by myself and the money is valuable to me, but that's for other reasons. It's because of its potential to be able to trade for the goods and services that I want. So let's talk about what money is. In a sentence, here it is. Money is a medium of exchange. Money is a medium of exchange. Money allows for trading and exchange in a way that barter does not. Now, barter, you have trades, and a lot of people say, oh, well, it'd be nice if we could go back to a barter economy where we could trade stuff for other stuff. And you can, people still do barter, but a barter economy remains fairly primitive. It doesn't raise to the level of a standard of living and material well-being that a money system does, or a modern economy. Because barter, there's nothing wrong with it, but it has some pretty severe limits that money doesn't have. And so when money is recognized, it allows people to facilitate their trades even better. So money is a medium of exchange. It helps facilitate trading between people. It helps them exchange for the goods and services that they want, and then they can take that money and then trade it again for something that they want more at the time of their choosing. So the value of money is determined by its future performance. The value of money is determined by its future performance. If you didn't have any faith that $20 in your pocket right now is going to be worth anything tomorrow, or worth anything in the next 5 minutes, you would try to spend it as quickly as possible, or it would go into non-worth. So what money does, in order for something to be money or to continue as money, we have to have it has to have a value of future performance, at least in our minds. We have to think that something, that $1 today is going to buy me something in the future when I want to spend it. And so that it's going to hold its value. Because if it doesn't, when there's hyperinflation and things like this, places like Zimbabwe, places like the beginnings of Nazi Germany, when they had huge hyperinflation and the government had printed a ton of money to deal with World War I and pay off all these war debts, creating huge amounts of hyperinflation where the money was losing value and the stores were raising their prices and the money was losing value throughout the day. The money would buy you more in the morning than in the afternoon or the evening, because the value of the money had dropped by then and the prices had risen by then. So when money is no longer able to hold value for future performance, people will refuse to recognize it. It will cease to be money. Money exists also as a medium of exchange because of another reality, economic reality, another economic principle that's true in people. And this is the concept of inequality of exchange, the concept of inequality of exchange. And without recognizing this, we do this all the time. Maybe we don't understand the formal definition of it, but this is called inequality of exchange. An economy is only possible. An economy of trade is only possible because of disagreement. And this doesn't mean angry disagreement. This doesn't mean contentious disagreement where people are having some sort of fight with each other. This type of disagreement is different. One person goes to McDonald's and they have $5. The other person works for McDonald's and they make food. These two individuals have a disagreement over value. They're valuing things differently. The person going to McDonald's values the fast food more than the money that he has. The worker values the money more than the food he possesses or is in charge of. So that value of more than, that ranking order, allows these two to interact with each other, to come into contact with each other, and trade. This person gives up the money to get food. This person gives up the food to get money. They had a disagreement. They both thought that they would be better off with the thing that they wanted more than the thing they already had. And therefore they traded. They traded because they believe, and they're correct in subjective value terms, they are both better off. They only traded, they only entered into this agreement without any type of force or anything like that, all other things being equal. They only entered into this type of agreement because of mutual benefit. They saw that the thing that they were giving up was less valuable than what they were getting. This is called inequality of exchange. A disagreement that we have with others all the time that allows us to trade. Now, money is a good that is traded, just like any other goods, just like a toothbrush, just like shoes, just like a chair, just like a car. There's a trade taking place. The value of what money is as a market commodity is money is something that holds value and allows you to exchange for what you want until you're ready to make that trade. That's why money is valuable. So inequality of exchange is that one person wants to possess what the other person has more than he or she wants to keep what he or she has. And then this makes voluntary exchange possible. So money is a market commodity. It's a good for trade. So people say, well, why don't we live in a barter economy? Well, we kind of do. Money just makes for, in a sense, an advanced barter economy. We go in and we trade money to get something else, just like if someone traded shoes for apples. Well, it's the same thing, trading money for apples and then buying shoes or whatever. And so money is a market commodity. It serves people well. And if nobody wants it, nobody values it or desires it, it's not money. So these are, I think I said 7, but there's actually 5. There's some different words that people use, but they basically come down to 5 attributes of money. And an attribute is a characteristic or a feature of something that makes it what it is. It's something that we're looking at attributes of money, something that makes money money, that if it doesn't have one of these 5 things, it can't be money. Or if it loses, it had at one time these 5 things, but loses one or more of them, it ceases to be money. And the first one, this is why money is superior in a sense of growth, economic growth, to a barter economy, is divisibility. Money can be divided. And so this applies to a lot of different things. Things can be split up and divided. Money has to be able to be split up and divided. So we take our dollars. A dollar can divide down into quarters, dimes, pennies, and these divisions allow us to make very precise statements about prices or things of that nature. So you can say something costs $1.50, and if you have a $5 bill, you're able to break that down, have change and that type of stuff in order to get to that exact price. With a barter economy, it's harder to do that. Okay, how many apples is a chair worth? Well, you could figure that out. If the person owning the chair wants apples, but apples may not be the only thing that that person wants. So they have to decide, okay, well, I only want 40 apples, but I think that the chair's worth 100 apples. Okay, and so they make that trade. But it's harder with something like, what if you want to trade the other way? You can't saw a chair in half. Or a horse. What if you're trading a horse for shoes? Well, it seems like a horse, depending on how badly this good or service is wanted, but it seems like a horse is going to be more valuable than one pair of shoes. But you can't divide up a horse. Or you can, but it's not going to, if you want a living horse, as opposed to horse meat or something like that, it's not going to be able to make those divisions. So this is what money brings to the table, is that it's divisibility. It also has to be portable. Money has to be transferable in some sense, where it can either be, now we have digital money, but cash, coins. This is one of the challenges with gold and silver and other commodities, is that though they could be money, they were very heavy. And so it was harder to facilitate the carrying of that stuff around. It was dangerous. You could be robbed. So where banks started coming from was people would charge to hold people's valuable possessions, their commodity, money, and stuff of that nature, and they would guard it and charge a fee for this. They would also issue out a certificate allowing you to come back and claim your gold, your silver, your precious possessions, whatever the case may be. And so those certificates, eventually, you could trade them as money. And so portability is a key factor of money. Money has to be transferable. It has to also be durable. Click the link there, and it's also in my slide, but also on this playlist of these videos. Money has to be durable. It has to be, it doesn't have to be indestructible, but it has to be long-lasting enough to not break down under basic handling conditions. This is why commodity monies lasted a long time. Gold and silver, no matter what you did to them, you could hammer them into all kinds of shapes, you could mix them with things, but you could melt them down and they wouldn't lose necessarily their integrity. Paper money, the American dollar, probably noticed if it's gone through the washing machine or something like that, that it has a durability, it has a strength to it that, yeah, you could throw that thing through a shredder or cut it up with scissors or something, and yes, you can break it. You can make it non-usable, but it is fairly durable. It's fairly strong material that's built to last a certain amount of time. Money also has to have, number 4, recognizability. Oh, and the durability video from The Office is Michael Scott saying, talking about how he has money problems, or they pick up on the fact that he has money problems, and he's like, no, I don't. And he crumbles up $1 and puts it in his pocket to show, hey, I'm willing to just destroy money. But they point out, obviously that, well, hang on a second, it's fine because now it's basically worthless. Money also has to have, number 4, recognizability. People have to recognize it. So in other places where they have different money, you can exchange. So it has some limited recognizability, but you usually have to exchange for other currencies. So the American dollar, we recognize in a lot of places, even outside the United States, but it has limits. The video for this one is Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation, and he goes to Britain, and he's in London, and he's trying to buy a postcard or something, and he's trying to give them an American dollar, and he refuses to use the British money. And they say, well, we don't recognize it. And he's like, yes, this is the greatest piece of currency on the planet. And he's trying to argue with them. And but money has to have recognizability. If people don't recognize it, it's not money. And I think that's probably where Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, they have these other things for them, but they miss, for a lot of people, or a majority of people, recognizability. And maybe portability, because not a lot of people may use the internet or something like that to always have it with them. It may be easier in a very modern economy with modern technology, but it may be missing those key aspects. Most of them fail at recognizability. If someone doesn't value it, it's not money. And then also number 5, scarcity. Uh, if your money is sand and you live in the desert, it may have 1 through 3. It may even doubtfully even have 4, but also it wouldn't have scarcity. Now, sand or water could be money if you take it to a place where it's rare and it's recognized and it has all these other characteristics. So lots of times, lots of things throughout history have been used as money. Whiskey at one time in American history was used by farmers as money. They grew corn and they distilled corn to make it last into whiskey and then could trade and pay debts with it. And it has, or had at those times, all of those things to it. And it would hold its value. Tobacco in early American history was used as money, as a commodity of exchange, and very successfully as money because it really had all of these things, especially recognizability and scarcity. And so these are the 5 things that something has to have in order to be money. Money allows for the determination, as I said before, of prices. It allows for the specifics to determine prices. So you can say something costs $12.95 and get to that specific amount based on who wants it, what's available, and what were the costs to provide those things, and then somebody's subjective value. They have to value it at some level, and so that's where you come out to a price. In our barter economy, it's very hard or impossible to come up with a system of uniform prices. So money and government. Now, government does not create money. It can try to create money and may be successful in a limited sense, but you can't enforce money on people if they don't recognize it, because recognizability is one of the key attributes of money. So unless it has all of those 5 things, something can't be considered money, even if legally enforced on people. So the process of creating and using money doesn't require government action. All it can do is enforce the standard or create mischief by monopolizing and tampering with the money system. So money is the product of individual economic action, not legislation. Now, there's a lot of things government, and it's not just government, individuals, banks, and governments can do this to money, moving up the scale of the level of consequences. Now, if I take my $20 bill over to my printer, and I put it on there and I print out a bunch of copies and they, for some reason, look real, and I'm able to actually take them and spend them into the economy. Let's talk about this ethically and then economically. Ethically, I've committed a crime. My crime is fraud. My crime is counterfeiting, most specifically, the printing of fake money and trying to spend it into the economy. My crime is tampering with the money system. It's a form of theft. It's theft through fraud, theft through tricking people, giving them something other than what I'm claiming to give them in order to get the full amount of what they're giving me. And so when this starts to happen, this happened in lots of societies when they started to clip coins and mix them with dross and other types of metals that would make the gold less valuable but make it weigh the same. And then what started happening was the sellers started picking up on this and started watering down their product as well. And so this is the process known as inflation. So that's my ethical problem. But my economic problem is I've done something to the whole money system. Now, the whole money system may not recognize a huge amount of consequences from this. But what have I done to the money itself and the money in the rest of the system that everybody else possesses? Well, by making fake money and spending it into the economy without anybody noticing, I've kind of stolen from everybody's money. And how was I able to do that? I couldn't get into their houses, their wallets, their purses, and steal everybody's money. No, but by my printing it and taking goods and services out of the economy for less than what I should have paid, what I've done is I've stolen and I've put bad money into the economy. I've taken the value of everybody's money down. Now, it may not be noticeable, just me as an individual counterfeiter doing this, but in principle, what I've done is not only dishonest, but it causes economic disruption. Because as I water down the money, as I take the value a little bit out of the money without adding any other goods or services into the economy, I've myself have tampered with the entire money system. And then, as I was saying before, sellers, as they get wise to this, if this starts to happen quite a bit, instead of giving the full amount that they say that they're giving for the amount of money that they're supposed to be receiving, what they start to do is give a watered down amount of their product. And oftentimes I'll have someone in class hold up a bag of chips, or you could do this with cereal or ice cream or anything of that nature. Hold up a bag of chips and feel on that bag of chips where the chips end and the air begins. And there's about half air, half chips. Now, that is a product of inflation. Now, there's always been some air in the bags, but they used to be a lot more full. And that's a product of inflation as well. Now, banks can start doing this even better, even on a larger scale, because what banks started doing was what was called fractional reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking, notice it has the word fraction in it, meaning part of. And so what they did was people would give them their gold and then they would give out a certificate. This certificate could now be used as money. We traded, and this is where we start to get the basics of kind of a paper money system. But the problem with that is that banks, dishonest banks and bankers, started thinking, you know, we could get a lot more customers, collect a lot more fees if we give out more paper than we have in our actual reserves, gold, silver, precious metal, whatever the value of these things was determined to be. And we bet that not everyone is going to come back to claim their gold and silver at the same time. So what we can start doing is we can start issuing more and more money while only holding on to a fraction of what that money can come back and claim. Now, obviously, there's a logical problem here, not necessarily a practical problem, but a logical one, that if everybody came back now to claim with their certificate saying they get 1 ounce of gold, because it's supposed to be a 1-to-1 correspondence, and they only have half the amount they're supposed to, system breaks down. They've stolen the value. They've also created inflation in the money. Now, governments can do this par excellence. They can do this at the highest possible level, because what governments usually do is create a central bank, which is a monopoly over the money system. It's claimed to be the only ones legally able to have the authority to print money. Now, it may be legal, but it's still, legality does not change economics. The same economic consequences may be present. Now, government can cause inflation in the money supply, and this is through printing money, which I have another video on here about inflation as the hidden tax, because printing money is a tax of your savings, your paper money. And I explain how that's a tax. But if you have $10,000 in the bank and the money supply gets doubled by printing without adding any other goods or services, work or production into the economy, and now your $10,000 buys half the amount that it used to, it's like you've had a $5,000 tax. And now printing doesn't even, now a lot of times people say, well, the government, the Federal Reserve doesn't print money. Yes, I know in a literal sense now it doesn't print money, although it does. There is a printing press that this is why we have that stuff. Somebody had to print it. But they can just change it digitally through computers. They can declare there's more money in the system. And by declaring that there's more money in the system, this artificially brings down interest rates on borrowing. Because normally interest rates communicate there's a greater amount of savings available from which to borrow, to make loans, to invest in new businesses, things of that nature. But when money is just printed into the economy and this lowers the interest rate, and then people start thinking, well, this interest rate must mean there's more available to borrow from and to make loans and to make businesses. And they start making all these businesses and taking out more and more loans, more and more debt because they think there's a demand for all these businesses. And then all of a sudden, they realize that it's not reality. The bubble pops and it comes back to reality. You have mass unemployment, you have a drop in the value of money, you have a falling in the amount of prices because the demand was not what it was thought to be. It's way down. And this causes an economic recession or depression. This is, later on, we'll talk about these are the factors that were present in the Great Depression. And it can destroy an economy. And when an economy goes through this, it often goes through greater political changes because money is very personal. It affects people's lives and well-being. And when that happens, people are more willing to give up their freedoms, their rights to a government that may do them harm. This was the case in Nazi Germany. They were going through a period of hyperinflation. They were going through a period of economic recession and depression. They were going through a period through which their central bank printed and printed and printed money and destroyed the economic system after the payments for all of World War I. And then this allowed them or created the conditions in which Hitler could rise to power and was accepted in voluntarily. So the jealous guard over the value of money is not just an economic graph, but it actually is a defense over personal liberty and freedom in a free country. Here's the inflation rate of what's happened to the dollar since 1913, when the Central Bank of the United States was created, the Federal Reserve. And so you can see that this does not mean that our buying power has increased. This is the value that has been taken out of your money. $100 in 1913 would buy you the equivalent of what it would take $2,591.49 in 2019. Today's prices, that means that the money has been inflated almost 2,500%. That means today's prices are higher by 2,491.49% than they were in 1913. It would take $2,500, almost $2,600, and I think I put that there. That's, I think, an error. I think it's supposed to be $2,500, but anyway, on the higher prices, it would take almost $2,600 to buy today what would have only cost $100 in 1913. So often people talk about, well, the minimum wage, we need to raise the minimum wage. Well, there's some problem with that. Setting a minimum wage is just setting a price floor. It just makes it illegal to work below this certain wage. And so that just, all things being equal, creates unemployment at the expense of some other people who benefit from a higher minimum wage. But people say, well, the minimum wage hasn't kept up with inflation. That's true. The Federal Reserve now tries to shoot for an inflation target of 3% a year, which means if you got money sitting in the bank and just sitting there and not growing, it's having 3% a year taken out of it because of inflation. Now, inflation has grown past the minimum wage, but a dollar in, I believe, 1913, 1914, a silver dollar would be worth now $14 to $15. A silver dollar in 1915 would be worth $14 to $15. Often we hear people talking about, I'd like a $15 minimum wage, and I'd like that legislated, please. But the problem with that is the money system. $1 an hour under those conditions would be worth the equivalent of $15 an hour now with that American silver dollar. This is why gold has been the longest lived type of money on record. Gold has all the 5 characteristics. Gold, the government only affirmed what the market created when they recognized gold coins or had emperor stamped on gold coins or those type of things. And so money is a product of individuals making decisions to buy and sell. That's where money comes from. It can't be enforced on people. It shouldn't be monopolized. And then once money is defined, the weights and the measures should not be changed in the marketplace. This is theft, this is fraud, no matter who does it. So a consistent standard of measurement must be enforced. This is why you could take money into another country and weigh it and it be the same, have an equivalence. And so money that's backed in a commodity cannot be eaten up by inflation. But, and paper money can be fine as long as it has a one-to-one equivalence. But if you start printing more than you have in commodity, it starts taking away from the value of that money. Lastly, Alan Greenspan wrote, who was the chair of the Federal Reserve, at one point talked about the value of gold. Now, he had a major switch in his thinking. He talked about why gold was sound money previously. It doesn't have to be gold. It just has to be something that people can't print against it in some sense. But Alan Greenspan believed in eventually printing money into the economy. He said, well, we don't really print, but that's trying to get around what the main issue is. At one time, he said in this essay, Gold and Economic Freedom, he said, quote, "In the absence of the gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. Confiscation is taking, inflation is the printing of money. There is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. There is no safe store of value. The financial policy of the welfare state requires that there be no way for owners of wealth to protect themselves. Deficit spending, that means spending into debt, is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. Gold stands in the way of this insidious process. It stands as a protector of property rights. If one grasps this, one has no difficulty in understanding the status antagonism toward the gold standard."